Nice to see everybody this morning. Like I said, Ephesians 2 and verse 1. And the title I have today is Why Love Conquers. And I say why because we've heard that love conquers. I mean, that's one of those things that's just kind of tossed about. But why does it conquer? That is a whole nother thing. And this may seem like an odd passage, but we're going to read this. There's a reason. Ephesians 2:1. And you hath he quickened who were dead in trespass and sins, wherein in time past you walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience, among whom also we all had our conversation in times past in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature the children of wrath, even as others. But God, who is rich in mercy, for his great love wherewith he loved us, even when we were dead in sins, hath quickened us together with Christ. By grace you are saved. And hath raised us up together and made us sit together in heavenly places in Christ Jesus, that in the ages to come he might show the exceeding riches of his grace and his kindness toward us through Christ Jesus. Now, this might seem an odd passage, really, to begin a message on love and the conquering of the strongholds of the powers of evil and sin, but there's a lot in this passage, much to be meditated on, and we're going to look at some of these things today for a little further consideration. And I say why love conquers, and that love does conquer, because of course I talked last week about how to combat a devil, and I said a devil because there's more than one. There's the devil, but he's called the prince of the power of the air, and 1/3 of the angels fell with him. So there's 1/3 of the angels that are in this current world doing their thing. And their thing is to try and cause ruin and chaos and pain and suffering and death. That's what they live to do. And in thinking of the devil and his kind, I want you to consider this. One can see an anti-ness when looking at their motives and desires compared to those of God and his servants and his children. And I know that anti-ness isn't a word, but it's kind of what a fellow runs out of English, especially when you grow up in Fayette County, West Virginia. I mean, we don't even use all our syllables. I'm not even sure we use all our consonants. When it's all said and done, though, think about this. Antinous isn't a word, but I really fail to find a true word that completely shows the degree of hatred, the degree of envy, the degree of bitterness, every base emotion, really, that is directed toward and at God and his own, as well as the difference, the degree of the difference between good and evil. The devil and his kind are unique in that they have no redeeming feature whatsoever. There is nothing in them. Nothing. A complete and total lack of anything that could be called good or righteous or holy or wholesome. There is nothing in them. I've looked into the matter somewhat, and it is astounding the degree to which they are a void of goodness, a void of anything good, holy, righteous. There is nothing good, holy, or righteous in them. Nothing. And we live in a society today that's always got an excuse. Well, they can't help it because, and they can't help it because, little Junior wouldn't be a twit, but his daddy was just awful mean to him when he was little. Well, where were you at? I wouldn't have stole that car, but my parents didn't teach me not to steal. You just admitted that you know not to steal because you said your parents didn't teach you not to. So you know not to steal. That's not my fault. It's genetics. Well, I can help you with that. I have some. I don't know if I have DNA or RNA. All I know is that I don't have. Normally it's the twisty thingy. Yeah, my DNA is just a rope. I can't help it because yeah, you can. Yes, you can. We always want an excuse. We always want some way to say, well, I wouldn't be this way, but. There's no, I'm going to be this way, but with the devil. So why do I say that love is a weapon? Well, I want you to consider what our enemy lacks. You see, hey, they have love as a sort of emotion, but it is only a love of self or a love of possession. There is no love among the devils for one to another. There's no honor. There's no loyalty that is anything but enforced. It is either be the stronger or be the weaker. That is how that works. And we see that played out to a degree even in fallen man. That we see this, that there is a love, but it is a love of self. There is a love, but it's a love of possession. This is mine, you can't have it. Even in fallen man, who regularly delves the deeps of vice and villainy, a complete lack of love for any other of their fellow man is known as odd, it's known as aberrant, even abhorrent. And I want you to think on this a moment. We, the race that cursed creation through our rebellion, our treachery, find a total lack of love or empathy odd and even repulsive. And now this isn't to say that there aren't people of that sort. But it is to say that there are at least those outliers in even fallen man that can love at times, even if that love is bent and twisted. We see, even in fallen man, a love for our children. We see a love on the part of fathers. We see a love on the part of mothers. And it may be a sinful love. It may be a bent love, so to speak, but we see love. In fallen man, I have seen spouses that are lost as a ball in tall grass, but they love and are loyal and legitimately care for one another. This is a thing. So the idea of a being with no love, no empathy, nothing but a desire for the gratification of self and the possession of things for self is even repulsive to us to some degree. But think about this. Look at our government. It says in Scripture that we fight against spiritual wickedness in high places. But we don't stop to think about that in both applications. There are two. Number one, consider the book of Daniel. When the answer to Daniel's prayer arrives, the angel says that he was delayed by the prince of Persia. Let me help you all out. There's no Persia at that time. There is no human government. There is no human kingdom. There is no human empire of Persia. It's not there. So it wasn't a man. For there to be a prince of Persia, for a man to have withstood an angel, there had to be the government that would make this man the prince of Persia. There's no government of Persia at this time. So it wasn't a mere man that withstood this angel. It was a fallen angel. It was a fallen being. It was a demon. And it says it was a prince of Persia. What does that tell you about their government? That they have some sort of hierarchy. Because he said the prince of Persia would say, you're not a prince unless you've got people under you. You've got beings under you. So there's a government of some sort there, although we don't understand it. So we have the pulling down of wickedness in high places amongst these beings. We also have in our government the pulling down of wickedness in high places. It's only recently that we have had even a kind of maybe possibly, resort to sanity when it comes to the alphabet community. Okay? I'm sorry, you were not born a billy goat or a sheep or a fox or a dog or a cat. I'm sorry, you weren't. You weren't. You just weren't. You're not a man that was born as a woman. You're not a woman that's born as a man. I can guarantee you that I can run your DNA and I can tell you to 100% whether you have a genetic discrepancy, a genetic illness, or whether you're a man or a woman. It really is that simple. It's amazing whenever they dig up the remains of an ancient graveyard or burial site or a battlefield or something, they can tell you, they'll do a DNA test of like 600 men and 20 women died there. What about the other 3,000 genders? Well, they're not there because you're a man or a woman. DNA don't lie. I want you to consider something. How many people in your world, how many of our representatives in power and are in power to serve and encourage their fellow man? Consider what I've just said. How many people do you know in positions of authority that inhabit those positions of authority with the goal and mission to serve and encourage their fellow man? I'm going to say that list is almighty small, if there's even a list. Now, I want you to contrast this to what I've said here. Do I rule or do I lead here? I lead. My job isn't to command, my job is to serve. My job is to lead. And in this we see a problem with those people in positions of power. Because those that aim to rule most often intend to rule well, but rule they will. And whatever way that they might rule. They live their lives based on the idea that they know more than you, they know better than you, they know more than I, they know better than I, and they aim to impose their will upon me for what they consider their good or the greater good. The greater good being whatever is good for them. Consider business, companies, corporations, anything really. I want you to ask yourself this today. Why should there have to be a union of workers to force a company to pay and compensate its employees fairly? To ensure their safety and security as they labor in service to that business. Why should you have to have a union to make management get you a hard hat? Why should you have to have a union to force a company to not make you work 18 hours a day? Why should you have to have a union to force a company to let your spouse, your widow, live in the house that you occupy until she can find someplace else if you die in an accident in their line of work? Do not tell me that the likes of Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, such men, do not tell me that they were great industrialists. They were not. They were cruel. They were vile. They were fallen. And they were evil. They made their millions on the backs of men and women that they enslaved, that suffered, that died daily, so that they could have a new house. You know, the last one with 20 rooms didn't work, so let's get one with 50. I got an Instagram back a while back. I fired off one to YouTube. I asked them if maybe they'll let me see a video in between their commercials. Then I asked if somebody needed a new yacht or a new island, or why were they doing that. They don't like it when you do that. Let me throw something out to you. It is ungodly and it is a sin to treat one's fellow man so poorly. It's a greater sin because you built your wealth on that man's bent back. On the labor of others you have prospered, and you have deprived others of their living. We see that in companies all the time. We see it in business all the time. We see it in government all the time. You know, we joke about the IRS, and now when I say this, I'm not saying don't pay your taxes. I happen to like street lights and roads. They're handy. It's kind of a nice thing. And I would really, really, really like it if they maybe make you take a test to make sure you can drive before you get in the vehicle and go take it down the highway. You know, these things are handy. Why do we give 30, 40, 50% of what we make and we never see where it goes? Well, that's a liberal thing. No, it ain't. That's a government thing. That's a conservative thing. No, it's not. It's a government thing. It's a government thing. It's not liberal or conservative. I can tell you what it is. It's anti-Christian. It's antichrist. It's theft. It's bribery. It's blackmail. But now add love. Love dictates that one care for those in employ. Love says, I've made mine, I need to take care of the man that helped me make mine. Love demands that to rule is to serve. Love says, I have a good house. Let me make sure that my people that are working in my employ have adequate shelter. Love says, I have all the clothing that I need. Let me make sure that those in my sphere of influence have the clothing that they need. Love says, I see a man that does not have a job, and I have something that I can put him to. Let's employ him. Love changes the dynamic of business. Love changes the dynamic of government. Love changes the dynamic of society. Love is why we are so different in here to what the world is out there. I'm going to pick on Brother Cecil because I was looking at the brother. I'm going to say it's true. I don't pick up a chance to torment you, do I? It's just like you get up in the morning and you're on my mind. I'll tell you something. If I asked for help right now and he was able, you'd help, wouldn't you? It's that simple. So anybody in here, I'm not going to point out any other names. I just want to pick on Cecil because I could. But on all joking aside, if any of us in here needed help, you going to tell me that anybody else in here is not going to go and see what they can do to help them? Now contrast that to outside these walls. Love demands that to rule is to serve. Here's a crazy idea. What if our government, from the local level all the way to the federal, had men and women in its employ that said, I need to help the people that I represent, that said, what can I do in the realm and sphere of influence that I have to help, to encourage, to grow, to magnify those with which I interact? What if all those folks that are on welfare of various kinds and sorts and places and things, what if those people were actually given a job? What if whenever you went into them and you really needed help, you could get the help, and whenever you didn't need the help, you got told to leave? What if you were able to look in love? And government can't look in love because government is government. But understand what I'm saying, the people. Love demands that one give way to self and instead to heed the other man. I know I probably drive you all nuts once or twice. Well, you're the pastor, whatever you want to do is what we'll do. No, if I am in a position where I can let you do whatever you want to do, I'm going to look at you and say what you want to do. Because there's no hide on my back whatsoever to let you do what you want to do. Now, if it's something that, pastor says, no, we ain't doing this. Well, then we ain't doing this. But if I have the leeway to look at you and say, well, what do you desire? What do you think would be the best way to approach this? What do you think that could be done, should be done to help or move the situation along, to fix, to grow, to build, whatever it is? If I have the leeway, what do we do? I have the ability, so why not use it? I can look at you and say, well, what would you like to do? What do you think is the choice? What do you think is the wise decision? What do you think the path forward should be? Well, I'm not. They're not even on a committee. I don't care. What if the idea I had was wrong and the idea you have is right? What if the idea that we both have is right, but yours is better? See, I'm good at having ideas, but you can ask my wife. A lot of them are bad. Love demands that I look to the person next to me and say, what can I do to help them, and what can they do? What way can I give them? And I want to say, is there any instance in Scripture of such a thing as these, growing in darkness and in sin? And I'm going to say not. And let's look to the religion of peace, as Islam calls itself, because that is a great contrast. You see, Islam is indeed a religion of peace, and it is a forced peace at that. It is a religion vested in forced integration, binding rules, and suffocating ritual. There is no love of the heart in that religion. There is obedience and fear. I literally saw a man in a mask say that Allah willed by violence for everyone to be subjugated to Allah, peace be upon him. That's not peace. It is a peace they have that is kept through threat of violence. And in fact, I would say that the religion of peace is no peace at all. It is a religion of suffocation, a religion of rigid walls and oppression, hidden behind a veneer of white lace. And I may speak of Islam at this moment, but you look at any given religion in this world and you tell me that you can't see that. Tell me that it is not so in Catholicism, where you will obey a man in a robe, or you'll be cast out by this man, quote unquote, to perish. Tell me that it's not so in Hinduism. Tell me that it's not so in Buddhism. These religions are peace through the binding of will, mind, body, government, and belief. And in this there can be no peace, because what is visible on the surface, which is peace and tranquility, lies about what is beneath. And in all of these I have described, there is not an ounce of love. There is only force. No Catholic ever looked at a Protestant on the rack as they tore them apart and said, I love you. No Protestant ever hung a Baptist in a gibbet on the front of a Lutheran church and said, well, we love you, so we're going to let you stay there while the birds peck your eyes out. There's no love in that. And yes, I said Protestant and I said Baptist. Baptists are not Protestant. We never were Protestant. We never came out of Rome. We never were part of Rome. We've been there since the beginning, and Rome is a couple hundred years too late. You don't have to like it, and you can be wrong, but talking ain't going to make you right. We, the saints of God, we have peace. We have true peace because we have the love of God shed upon us, and we endeavor to share that love by loving others. Do we do it well? Depends on the day. Actually, I'd say it depends on the moment. But I want you to consider something. It is that love that enables us to pity, that enables us to mourn, that enables us to care. You see, it lets the man being held captive know and understand that his captivity will end, and Christ will welcome him home, while mourning that his oppressor is lost and will plunge through the gates of perdition upon his death, his demise, with no hope, no warning, no remedy. Love lets a child of God sit by the drunk, the addict, the thief, the filthy, the wretched, and seek their betterment, both soul and body. I want you to consider Richard Wurmbrand. We preached and they beat us. We were happy preaching, they were happy beating us, so everyone was happy. Who was this man? He was a Lutheran minister who spent 14 years in prison in the USSR for preaching the gospel of Christ. He had a love, a burden for the souls of the men who abused him and abased him. Love kept him from hatred. Love kept him from seeking revenge. Love let him see his privilege in the dark of a feces and urine floored cell, as well as the end of the men who placed him there, and he cared that their end was dreadful. We get mad when someone cuts us off in traffic, and this man prayed for the souls of the men that beat him, that threw him in a cell with a cement floor and no drain and nowhere to go to the bathroom. Understand what he says. We were happy preaching, they were happy beating us, so everyone was happy. Consider that. For 14 years. This is 14 years in prison. 4 or 5 years of that was in solitary confinement. Never minding what he suffered whenever he was not in prison. We have become accustomed to being told to go to hell. It's said so often that one would think that there is an express train or a bus waiting for us to get on and deliver us to that location. This world is angry, it is hateful, it is intolerant in the worst of ways. And in all this, it is love that allows us to set aside the cruelty, the domination, the hatred, and to tell those who despise us that hell awaits and that they will not escape by any means. They do despise us, and we are mocked publicly and often, but we are right. And being right should give us the ability to desire for them what we have been granted. And in this statement, I see love most clearly. I've often wondered at the soul claiming Christ that says that they're saved, but they steadfastly refuse to learn of Christ or to share the news of salvation, that you can, in fact, be reconciled to God. The person that sits and will not allow God, will not admit to God, will proudly announce they are of God, but hoard salvation as if somehow they must keep it to themselves or lose it. What kind of malice has to be carried in one's heart and soul to keep silent to a man who is lost in sin and is in danger of eternal damnation? How little do we care for the person next to us? It is not his house, his possession, his family, his friends, or even his body at stake. It is the stake of his eternal soul. And we tell him to have a nice day at the checkout, at the receipt, department store, when he checks our receipt at the department store exit, when we give him our order at the restaurant, when he loads or offloads our truck at the dock or the yard, whenever he comes up to us and says, "You were going 10 miles an hour over," and I say, "No, it was 5. That doesn't work, by the way. Don't tell me we care. We don't. I tell you a thing. I see in our town, every time I'm through it, the people with the backpacks, the jackets in the 80-degree heat, the walk, the attire, the actions that give addicts away from yards, not feet or inches. And yes, if you're listening to me today and by some chance you are an addict, I'm going to tell you that you stick out like a neon light in absolute darkness. The way that you walk, your emotions, the way that you carry yourself, the way that you dress, you stick out like a sore thumb. And I'm going to tell you that I feel no need to give them clean needles or Narcan or any other such garbage. And I'm not going to hand one of those folks $1. They can spend $1 on drugs or something sleazy. But I can buy them a sandwich. I can get them something to drink. I can get them a pair of shoes or socks or a hat if it's cold. I can sit by them, and I can talk to them, and I can love them, and I can see that they are a daughter, a son, a parent, a child, a wreck that never intended to be a wreck. I can hurt for them, and I can mourn for them, and I can tell them about Jesus. I can listen to the lies, to the fairy tales, to the dreams and the exaggerations. I can love them, and I can realize that I am them, that I have told the lies, that I have told the fairy tales, that I've had the dreams and the exaggerations. It's the same with my siblings in Christ. Whatever they do to me, I have surely done to others, or I have done worse. I can love them, and I can forbear whatever comes because they are my family, and I love them. I can go to the greatest or the least, and I can be assured that they will take care of me, whatever my need is. That is love. When you say, Mike, you can't be that way to those people. You can't encourage what they do. I don't have to encourage what they do. I can sit there and let you lie to me all day long. I've had people do it. Now, I can tell you about Jesus, and I can leave you sitting there in the heat, or the cold, with a pair of tennis shoes, every stitch of clothing you have on you, everything you own in a duffel bag or a backpack. Part of that's probably wrapped in aluminum foil for reasons. I can tell you to get lost. I can tell you about Jesus, and I can leave you sitting there in the mess that you're in. You just pray to Jesus, he'll help you. Or I can sit down next to you and I can say, are you hungry? I can sit down next to you, I can say, are you thirsty? I can sit down next to you and say, you're having a horrible day, I can see it, what's wrong? See, I can talk to you all day long about Jesus. But if I don't have the love of Jesus, there's no point talking to you about the love of Jesus. And when I say have the love of Jesus, I'm not talking about Jesus loving me. I'm talking about me loving you. What do you mean, Mike? Well, real simple. That addict that you're sitting beside of, that reprobate that you're talking to, take the toolbox is unlocked on my service truck and let's see what happens. I'm sure it'll be there when I come back. I'm not stupid. But I also know that I'd do the very same thing if I was in that position. I would do the very same thing. I'm going to get cleaned up tomorrow. Son, you ain't going to do nothing but wipe your hands off tomorrow while you stick another needle in your arm. You ain't getting cleaned up from the drugs. You ain't even taking a bath. But I can see if you're hungry. You see, the thing is, I can tell you about the love of Jesus, and I can leave you sitting there in the boiling sun or the freezing wind with too much clothing, not enough clothing, the wrong kind of clothing, no food, whatever it is. And I can tell you all about the love of Jesus. He'll save your soul. And I can book my way, or I can show the love of Jesus. And you say, well, showing the love of Jesus is so, don't cast your pearls before swine. Okay, well, if they reject you and tell you to get lost, get lost. But if they listen, talk to them. There's no one beyond the reach of Christ. And I'm going to close with this little tidbit. I see people all the time, they say, well, you just pray for someone. I agree, pray. But I want to ask you a question. If Brother George is sitting there about to cook on a tractor, and he says, Lord, I didn't anticipate this, and I'm thirsty as all get out, and I walk by with a bottle of water in my cooler, and I keep on trucking, am I going to be the answered prayer or not? What do you mean? God uses men, sinful men, and I'm thankful for that because I'm sinful, to bring His will to pass. And if Brother George prays for a bottle of water, I just keep going back to water, but here we are. If Brother George prays for a bottle of water, and I walk by and I have a bottle of water, and I offer him a bottle of water, who answered that prayer? God did. Well, you gave him the bottle of water, yeah. God placed me there at that time for that reason. Have a bottle of water, George. Somebody's sitting there hungry, broken, ruined. Be the answered prayer. Be the evidence of Christ in their life. Be what Christ would be. Christ was holy. And nobody came away from Christ unchanged, but Christ sat down with sinners. He sat down with thieves. He sat down with reprobates. He sat down with prostitutes. We were talking about it this morning back there just informally. Some of us that, if we would be seen walking by a liquor aisle or coming out of a bar, people would not stop their tongues for weeks. But let me ask you something. Do the people in those bars, do they not need Jesus? Well, there's other places to meet them. Well, yeah, there are, but that doesn't change the fundamental question. Do those people in those bars need Jesus? Do they need salvation? Does the fellow that is coming out of, Walgreens. Does the fellow coming out of Walgreens with the gallon jug wrapped up in a brown paper bag, does he need Jesus? We won't talk to him because we don't want to be associated with him. No. Jesus sat down with a Samaritan woman. And I'm going to close with this. Jesus sat down with a Samaritan woman. He broke so many rules when he sat down and spoke to that woman that it would boggle your mind. Remember the passage where they asked where her husband is? Why is he talking to her? No sane Jewish man talked to a woman unless he had other than good things in mind. Yeah. No sane Jew talked to a Samaritan, period. Never mind a Samaritan woman. No man talked to a Samaritan. If you were a Jew, you didn't talk to them at all because you hated the ground they walked on. You hated the fact they existed. So Jesus goes and he sits down at a well and he asks a strange woman to give him something to drink. Then he strikes up a conversation with her, which is, if he had to speak to her, it should have been, go get your husband, or I need to speak to your husband, and let it go at that. So he strikes up a conversation with a strange woman in public for everybody to see, and he had an appointment with her. And whenever he was done speaking to her, she believed, and not only did she believe, but many in that town believed because of her and what she had done. She was the instrument he used to draw others unto himself. He spoke to a woman when a man did not speak to a woman, period. And he had a conversation with a woman whenever you didn't say 3 words to a woman except, where's your husband? And you did not especially strike up a conversation with a Samaritan. He broke at least 3 cardinal rules of Jewish religiosity right there. Right off the bat. I want you all to think about today. If I was driving down the road and there was a woman 20, 30, 40 years old standing by the road, car broke down, I said, hey, I'll take you up to the store or wherever you got signal, you use cell phone, whatever. The right person drive by and they see her in my vehicle, what are they going to do? Yeah. That mouth is going to start flapping. Before long, I'll have 3 wives and 2 children on the side, and I fly into Cancun, Mexico to meet the other ones. Jesus had an appointment with a woman in Samaria. Jesus had an appointment with a tax collector named Levi. Jesus had an appointment with a little fellow named Zacchaeus. Jesus had an appointment with sailors. All these people that Jesus associated with were the bottom of the barrel. And he did it with love and out of love. And we don't want to talk to the fellow by the road because he might give us cooties. Brother Roger, if you would come.
Thank you, Brother Mike. Appreciate the message.